All right, it's all yours, Hank.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for attending this special meeting of the Deployment Committee. I appreciate knowing that we have a quorum and wanted to turn it over to Brian to make any announcements that we may have before this.
Yes, so just a few things on the consent agenda. We've got the meeting minutes from our November 15th Deployment Committee meeting. And then we've got one of our under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million report outs. So that's just clearing the queue as we would report out to the Deployment Committee. So just resolution number 1 for the Deployment Committee.
Great, thank you. And before we move to the consent agenda, I wanted to open it up for any public comments. So if you have a public comment, please either raise your virtual hand or your real hand or just speak up. And I'll give it just a few seconds for people to be able to do that.
Good morning, Bettina here, so I'm late.
Morning, Bettina.
Morning.
Morning.
Okay, not hearing or seeing any indications of public comment, we can move to the consent agenda. As Brian noted, there's one item on the consent agenda for resolution approval, and that is the meeting minutes of the regular meeting of November 15th, 2023. And there is one report out, including the under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than 1 million staff approved transactions memo, which clears the queue for the staff approved transactions, consistent with the comprehensive plan and budget. So do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the Deployment Committee for November 15th?
This is Bettina, so moved.
Is there a second?
This is Lonnie, I second.
Okay, is there any?
Or Matt, second.
No, happy to not.
I didn't want to step on you, Matt.
And any discussions or proposed edits or revisions? Okay, then hearing none, can we please vote on approving the meeting minutes of November 15th? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? And I will abstain because I was not able to attend the meeting. So, okay, with that underway, we'll move to the under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than 1 million staff transaction approvals. And for that, I will turn it over to Brian Farnan to lead the discussion.
Perfect. And I'm actually going to pull in Mackie because, this is going to be impactful on his program in particular and Sergio's. And we all met internally and came up with the proposal that we set forth in the memo. And I'll let Mackie describe it. So over to you, Mackie.
Great, thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, you'll recall last time we met, we talked about our current process, which is that staff has the authority to approve individual projects which are less than 500,000 with an aggregate approval authority of 1 million. We have 2 primary programs that are making use of that authority, our CPACE program and then the Energy Storage Solutions program. So we brought a proposal last time to split those buckets. So each program had its own area of authority, and there were some questions around, how much of a constraint is this? Is this causing issues? What's some of the data around the sort of project volume here? So if you'll go to the next slide, we went and looked back at the last year. There's a spreadsheet which had a lot of data in there, but that we shared that shows all over the last, actually, I think goes even further back than the last year, but it shows all the times we've used the staff authority. But there was one area that I thought was particularly useful for the discussion we're having here, where we've been constrained by the authority that we have. So this is 3 time periods where you'll see each sort of block in between the gray areas represents time in between deployment or board committee meetings. The lines that are in black are CPACE projects, and the lines that are in red are energy storage solutions projects. So you'll see in this case, luckily for me personally, in every single case, the CPACE project was the first to get approved, and used up most of the authority, or at least half, in every case, which left little to no authority for the energy storage solutions program. So all those projects were taken to either the deployment or the next board committee meeting. So there was no ability to approve them all. You know, if Sergio had gone first, then I would have had CPACE borrowers who were hanging out there, not able to move forward with their project because we didn't have any more authority at the staff level to approve them and close the documents. So again, I think this is a perfect example of how keeping these in the same buckets. Again, luckily in this case, it didn't constrain at least the CPACE activity, but there were, we had used up most of the authority for ESS to approve any of these projects or all of the projects that they had in front of them, and get those incentive letters executed. So I'll pause there in case there's any questions.
Mackie, it's Matt, just so I understand it, and this is, I think, exactly what we asked for. Thank you. So like on that first tranche in November 2022, there's $500,000 per project, $1 million in the aggregate. So is it only the last 2 that couldn't have gotten approved, that would have put you over the aggregate? In other words, it looks like, if I read it right, the queue was for that whole month 1.3 million. So it was 348,000 over, which is really those last. Am I reading it right? Okay.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's sort of
Okay.
sequentially taking out you'll see the far right column is funds remaining, which is the authority. And as each one is approved or theoretically approved, the ones that were not approved, it takes away from that authority.
Right. Okay. And then same thing on the month below. It looked like it was just maybe the last project that got nipped there. All right. And you just selected these months as an example. I assume that this continued throughout 2023, or did it not continue?
There weren't as many ESS projects throughout 2023. CPACE continued to make use of the authority. I think Sergio's on. I don't know if that's because we were just didn't even try because the authority wasn't there. I'm not sure, but
Was this slug of ESS projects part of the timing of the rollout? In other words, were these pent up projects that were part of sort of an initial rollout, and just represented higher volume, or are they consistent with what we're seeing, month to month now?
Yeah, for whatever reason, this is how they are being submitted by developers. They come in batches, the last batch is that January of 2023. And that's when we launched the second year of the program, and there were discussions of lowering the CNI incentives. So developers rushed to, push a bunch of projects, but that's what triggers, right? Is the possibility of lowering the incentive, what causes these batches.
Yeah. We used to see that in other programs. Yep. Okay.
So this is Bettina. So on the month of November, you couldn't do 348 million out of this bucket. Where did it get funded from then?
The entire list of ESS projects were instead taken to the board for approval. Or I'm sorry, I don't know if it was the board or deployment, whatever the next appropriate meeting was, they were all, so rather than I think, Sergio, rather than individually approve any of those, the whole slug was taken to the next appropriate meeting.
So in theory, so the bucket got drawn to 0 and then another $1 million came in as the beginning balance for the next month, and rinse and repeat?
So actually the the authority was actually only drawn down whatever the whatever the two CPACE projects represents, because so what is that, like just almost 400,000. So there was around 600,000 authority remaining, but because there wasn't enough for all of the ESS projects, I believe they just took them all to the next board.
But then
Or
in
deployment
December,
committee meeting.
it shows all of a sudden you're back up to $1 million balance, starting.
Oh yeah,
balance.
I'm sorry. Yeah, at that, so the ESS projects were taken to the next appropriate meeting when they were approved, and the queue was also cleared at that. Just like you just did in the consent agenda, we cleared the CPACE projects from the staff authority, which replenished that $1 million balance.
So now we're back up to, so every month it just clears out, and then you're back up to the $1 million for that month.
Right. So for, what you just did in the consent agenda, we had used, that was like a 200 something thousand project. So we had like 700 something remaining. Now we're back to $1 million
Back to $1 million. Got it.
until you'll
Okay.
meet in January. So I was trying to get this revised actually real quick before we move forward, but couldn't get to it. There we go. So Brian, you want to talk about the final proposal, or should I?
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, right? It's basically two buckets. One that's going to be for the financing programs, kind of like as we're currently moving around, we're going to have this separate one for ESS, but we're going to bring it down from the $1 million cap to the $500,000 cap because it's a new program. Just with the reminder that at the end of the day, it's a pure approved program through a formulaic approach. So, if the deployment committee had concerns, we would have to talk through that, because that would likely be something we'd have to bring back through PURA and with the EDC partners. But in a nutshell, that's the proposal. Two buckets with a smaller bucket for ESS because it's a new program, and so it gives us more opportunity to kind of have Sergio report out and give you board members an opportunity to kind of just see what the program's all about.
So how much would each bucket be?
1 million for financing programs, which is
Yep.
primarily CPACE, and then
Right.
500,000 for ESS, energy storage solutions.
So it's unchanged on the financing program side. That's what it is now, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Just getting ESS out of there into its own
Yeah.
bucket.
I'll say, I mean, my comments are this, that as the designated sticky wicket, I'm fine with it. But my goal in like asking all the questions was, I honestly don't know the financing and underwriting, like what we're supposed to be looking at on these ESS projects. So in terms of like doing oversight, so I'm fine with the buckets, but maybe at a future deployment committee meeting, someone could walk us through, what these project financing documents look like. I mean, because we're so familiar with the CPACE formula and underwriting criteria, but if you asked me, I couldn't tell you what it is on the ESS side. So I'd just like to know a little more of what we're looking at. I have no reservation about giving staff the runway they need to approve these things. Once.
That's part of our plan. Sergio actually planned on, at our next deployment committee, kind of getting into some of the ESS program specifically.
Yeah. Okay. And then my other comment will be, which is contrary to what I think we direct you, is I wonder if $500,000 is enough. Looking at the numbers, I don't know how big an ESS project is, but I see a bunch on here that are, 400, 300. And if you had 2 in a month, you would exceed the bucket you're proposing. I don't know if 750 is more realistic, but I'll leave that to you guys. But really, I just want to know what we're supposed to be looking at on these ESS projects. Well, not today, but in the future.
This is Lonnie. I think this is such an emerging area, and Sergio has done a great job with just keeping up with it thus far, dealing with PURA and keeping us, sort of advised of what's happening. And to Matt's point, I think it's going to continue to evolve. There's going to be a whole bunch of surprises for all of us. And I think, you've already made it clear you're going to stay in touch with us on all of this.
And just one question in terms of what Matt was saying on the spreadsheet, the last three, I believe, ESS projects on January 2023 were all the exact same number, 456,902. Is that all one project divided up, or can you just? It's just to his point. Is it enough? Can you just describe those three, please?
Yes, they're identical projects. The incentives are calculated based on the size, on the capacity or the energy capacity of the batteries. So these are very likely 3 Tesla power packs, the 1 megawatt batteries, and they yield exactly the same incentive. So it's 3 separate projects, but identical.
Got it. So it goes back to Matt's question: is 500,000 enough for
Yes.
ESS? Because we're going to do more Tesla Powerwalls.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak for Deputy Commissioner Webster, but we've had conversations about building efficiency being critical to state of Connecticut and meeting our decarb goals. And if we could do more energy storage, not just generation, we'd want to make sure we have a program that's properly financed. You have the authority you need in order to move those forward. So, Lonnie, Matt, I would actually move to raise the 500,000, but that's my opinion. I'll defer to the rest of the board.
Well,
This is
if I-
Bettina.
if I
I'm
may-
fine with raising it too.
Yeah, if I may add some context here, we have approved 36 CNI projects. Of those 36, 18 of the incentives are above $500,000. So it's very likely that we will be hitting the cap moving forward. The next project that we are reviewing right now, we're going to bring it to the deployment committee in a month. It's $1 million incentive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
I still would like notwithstanding that, I still would like the $500 project, staff approval limit, but maybe $1 million in the aggregate. I hear what you're saying, Sergio, that you're going to have some projects that exceed it. But again, I think that's maybe the opportunity for us to learn a little more about the financing of these projects. And then my druthers would be, we mirror the financing bucket, we 500 and $1 million. And then if we need to come back after a year and raise the 500 to something higher just because of the way the formula works, that would be great. But I mean, I again, to the extent we're going to have some value as providing oversight, we just need to understand. I personally need to understand these projects better. So before we start approving $1 million projects without any deployment committee overview of it, I would like to get some experience first. So I propose, I would be happy with 500 per project and $1 million in the aggregate.
And staff can still, we'll stick with staff being instructed to kind of present a general overview of the ESS and provide still some of that general kind of like feedback and background on the program and how the program is actually run in conjunction with that too.
Yeah, and then maybe revisit the big cap, the project cap, down the road.
Makes sense. Thanks, Matt.
I mean, I think also, this is Lonnie again, as a former legislator, just looking at, you don't want to wave too much money at some of these things because they're going to ask for more than they necessarily need. So I think there's that we got to ride too. Keep an eye on, who's requesting more money than's really necessary, kind of thing, because that, as we all know, happens really fast. And so I think it's good to kind of keep it where, as Matt said, where we are now, and then really manage it and ride herd over it.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could I ask Sergio, though, to weigh in on that point? I believe the incentives are formulaic based on size of the project. I don't know, Sergio, can you add some perspective on that?
Yeah, correct. Yes, as I just mentioned, they're based on it's a preset incentive in dollars per kWh of energy capacity times the size of the battery.
Yeah, it's kind of how we, in the early days, we did fuel cells that way.
Yeah,
It's the same
so
way.
they say, hey, I'm going to install this battery. It's a mega Tesla power pack, 1 megawatt of capacity, 2 megawatt hours of energy capacity. We use, we multiply that energy capacity times whatever incentive level they are eligible for. And they are expected to install, that's what we do. We inspect those systems to make sure that the equipment they installed matches the equipment they listed in their incentive application.
And I assume, Sergio, there's some requirement that they provide some sort of demonstration that it would be charging and recharging in a way that's cash flow positive. Is that part of?
That's not part of that's not the charging patterns, not part of the incentive application, but my understanding is that it's part of the interconnection applications. The utilities ask them, tell me how you're going to charge and discharge the battery and how it's going to affect the grid.
Yeah, so it's a technical diligence, I believe, Sergio, rather than a financial feasibility diligence. There are all kinds of reasons why project sponsors may come into these projects with a wide range of financial return expectations. And so it's not part of the program for us to measure that.
But Bert, don't we have to, I mean, like, how do we get this underwritten then? Isn't somebody asking, like, how are they gonna pay for this?
But the thing is that what we do is we commit to provide the incentives, and then at the end of the year we go back to the utilities and say and seek cost recovery of those incentives with Pura. So the risk to us is very limited in the sense that we're going to recover those incentives through rates.
I think that, I mean, to me, this is why I'd love to have an
What's the point in
explanation.
time when the incentive is released, Sergio?
What's that?
What's the point in time when our incentive is released, meaning paid out to the sponsor?
Well, for that to happen, the battery needs to be energized, meaning all the project have been completed, the interconnection with the utilities completed, and we confirm that the battery is energized and providing and able to provide energy to the grid. So from the moment we approve an incentive to the moment we disburse the funds, might be a 2-3 year lag.
Yeah.
Right. And so my point in bringing this line of discussion up is to say it's not the risk of the green bank. The risk is on the project sponsor to make sure that the equipment is working, energized, et cetera. And until that point in time, the incentive is merely a reservation, a commitment, if you will, but subject to all the conditions of energizing and et cetera, as Sergio just explained. So we're not taking that financial risk. Other parties are taking that risk.
Well, I think that would be helpful to maybe have more of a little 101 on this, but also, I have as you might imagine, a bunch of questions just like how it's calibrated in terms, are we over incenting the things we've been through, which may be outside of our control. I get it. But I just think it would be, I mean, to the extent it's in our purview in this committee, there's something we should be looking at. And,
and we helped, and Matt, we did help design it. So even if Pura approved it, getting your feedback for like, yeah, I think you guys really got it right on X, Y, and Z, or like, yeah, I think that feedback would really still be helpful to us.
Yeah.
And I think, Lonnie, quickly, not to monopolize or anything, but how it's structured and who's responsible can really just spin out of control when things are not as they should seem, and you can get blamed for something that was not your, that was not your area of responsibility necessarily. So I think it's really good to be sensitive to all that, particularly given the fact that utility prices are probably going to go up, quite frankly. And, so I think it's just it's very good to do it, I think, the way we're talking about doing it is just to kind of keep it in a place where we can keep monitoring it and keep reporting back to us.
So I want to be mindful of time because we do have the full board meeting right after this. And I think we've reached our 20 or so minutes allotted for conversation on this. Just to recap, it sounds like there's, I see maybe two ways of doing this. And one is proceeding with the resolution and deferring to the memo with the separate but smaller cap bucket, and then maybe coming back to that later once there's been a discussion of how the incentive structure works and all of that. Because I think we got to a comfort level with with actually increasing the aggregate cap, but then unraveled a bunch of additional questions after that. Or we could proceed with a change based on some of the discussion to directly and completely mirror the structure of the financing program, which would require, I think, some adjusted language from the memo or in the resolution. So is there a sense of which of those two pathways the deployment committee members want to proceed? I guess to do it in a more formal process, is there a motion to amend resolution 2?
I'll make a motion to amend resolution 2 to have the ESS finance or authorization mirror the financing program authorization to give staff the authority to approve projects up to $500,000, any one project, and then in the aggregate $1 million before having to bring it to the deployment committee.
Is there a second to that motion?
This is Bettina, I'll second.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's fine. Your choice.
Any discussion on that? Going once, going twice. All right. Is there all those in favor of the amended resolution 2, which would have the energy storage solutions program directly mirror the financing program transaction and aggregate cap limits? All those in favor of that?
Aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I believe the ayes have it, and that that motion passes. Is that sufficient for the staff? We have everything we need? Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Then we can move on to just the last item on the agenda, which is adjournment. And we got done right on time. And all those, I guess, a motion to adjourn. Sorry.
So moved.
All right. Any seconds?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Okay. The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned. We will see you in 1 minute at the full committee meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Hank.
you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina. Thanks, Dominic.